How you doing, brother? Talk to me. Tell me what's going on.
Think God's gonna forgive us for the things we've done? I'm not sure about me.
You ain't got a fucking chance.
That's all you got? That's all you got?
There are stories in the world of superheroes that are built on hope, on grand ideals, on the belief that even in the darkest of times, there is always a way back to the light. And then there are stories like The Punisher, One Last Kill, which exist at the very edge of that spectrum, where hope is fractured, justice is blurred, and morality is reduced to a series of impossible choices that leave scars no matter the outcome. This upcoming television special, directed by Reinaldo Marcus Green and co-written by Green alongside Jon Bernthal, arrives not as a triumphant return of a hero in the traditional sense, but as something far more intimate and unsettling, a final descent into the psyche of a man who has spent years at war with the world and with himself. The character of Frank Castle has always stood apart within the Marvel landscape, a figure defined not by superhuman abilities or cosmic destiny, but by relentless willpower and an unyielding sense of vengeance. And with this new chapter, that identity is pushed to what feels like its inevitable breaking point. The very idea of one last kill carries a weight that extends far beyond the literal act of violence, suggesting finality, closure, and perhaps even the illusion of redemption. And it is within that tension that the narrative seems poised to operate. Frank Castle is not a man who believes in redemption in the conventional sense, nor is he someone who seeks forgiveness. Yet the notion that there could be an endpoint to his crusade introduces a question that has lingered over the character for years. Can a life built on punishment ever truly come to rest? The world he inhabits has always been one of shadows, where crime festers beneath the surface of everyday life, and where institutions designed to uphold justice often fail those who need them most. And in that vacuum, Frank Castle has carved out his own brutal form of order. However, as time passes and the body count rises, the cost of that order becomes increasingly difficult to ignore, not just for those around him, but for Frank himself. What makes this particular project especially compelling is the involvement of Jon Bernthal, not only as the actor embodying Frank Castle, but also as a writer shaping the narrative from within. That dual role suggests a deeply personal approach to the character, one that goes beyond surface-level action and delves into the emotional and psychological terrain that defines the Punisher at his core. Bernthal's portrayal in previous appearances has been marked by a raw intensity, a sense that every moment of violence is rooted in genuine pain rather than spectacle, and that same authenticity is likely to inform the storytelling here. Combined with Reinaldo Marcus Green's directorial sensibilities, which often emphasize character-driven narratives and grounded realism, the result is a creative partnership that seems uniquely suited to explore the complexities of Frank Castle in a way that feels both visceral and introspective. The setting of this story, while not fully revealed, can be imagined as an extension of the urban landscapes that have long served as the backdrop for the Punisher's war, environments where decay and resilience coexist in uneasy balance. These are places where ordinary people struggle to navigate systems that have abandoned them, where crime is not just an abstract concept, but a daily reality, and where the line between victim and perpetrator is often blurred. Within such a world, Frank Castle operates as both a protector and a destroyer, a figure who eliminates threats with ruthless efficiency, but also perpetuates a cycle of violence that never truly ends. The idea that this could be his final mission raises the stakes in a way that is less about spectacle and more about consequence, forcing both the character and the audience to confront what it actually means to bring an end to a life defined by war. As the narrative unfolds, it is likely to explore not just external conflict, but internal struggles that have always defined Frank Castle's journey. The loss of his family remains the foundational trauma that drives everything he does, a wound that is never healed and perhaps never can. Yet the passage of time inevitably changes the way that grief manifests. There is a sense that in this final chapter, Frank may be forced to confront aspects of himself that he has long avoided, questions about identity, purpose, and whether the path he has chosen has led him anywhere meaningful. The concept of one last kill suggests a target, a specific objective that must be achieved, but it also implies that beyond that objective lies something unknown, a void that Frank has never had to face because his mission has always provided a sense of direction, however destructive it may be. In a broader context, The Punisher: One Last Kill also reflects a shift in how stories within the Marvel Universe are being told, particularly on platforms like Disney+, where there is greater room for experimentation with tone and structure. While many entries in the franchise lean into spectacle and interconnected storytelling, this project appears to take a more contained and focused approach, emphasizing character over continuity and depth over scale. That does not mean it will be devoid of action, as the Punisher's world is inherently violent, but rather that the action will likely serve a purpose beyond mere entertainment, functioning as a reflection of the character's internal state and the moral dilemmas he faces. The relationship between violence and justice has always been central to the Punisher's narrative, and this installment seems poised to examine that relationship with renewed intensity. Frank Castle's methods have often placed him at odds with other figures in the Marvel Universe, particularly those who adhere to stricter moral codes. And while those interactions may or may not play a role in this story, the underlying tension remains. What distinguishes Frank is not just his willingness to kill, but his belief that such actions are necessary, that in a world where the system fails, someone must take on the burden of delivering justice by any means necessary. However, that belief is not without its contradictions, and as the title suggests, this may be the moment when those contradictions come to a head. There is also the question of legacy, a theme that becomes increasingly significant when a story is framed as a potential endpoint. Frank Castle is not a symbol in the same way that other heroes are, nor is he someone who inspires others to follow in his footsteps, yet his actions inevitably leave an impact on the world around him. The idea that this could be his final mission raises the possibility that the narrative will explore what remains after he is gone, whether his war has made any lasting difference, or whether it has simply perpetuated the very chaos he sought to eliminate. At the same time, the personal dimension of the story cannot be overlooked. Frank Castle's journey has always been deeply personal, driven by a singular loss that reshaped his entire existence. And any attempt to bring that journey to a close must grapple with the emotional weight of that loss. There's a sense that in this final chapter, the narrative may seek to revisit that origin in a way that feels both reflective and transformative, not by undoing the past, but by examining how it continues to shape the present. The possibility of closure, however elusive, becomes a central thread, even if that closure does not come in the form that audiences might expect. The collaboration between Bernthal and Green suggests a story that is not afraid to take risks, to push the boundaries of what a Marvel project can be, particularly in terms of tone and thematic depth. This is not a story that aims to provide easy answers or clear resolutions, but rather one that embraces ambiguity, acknowledging that some questions do not have simple solutions. The Punisher has always existed in that space of moral grayness, and this installment seems determined to explore that space more fully than ever before, challenging both the character and the audience to confront uncomfortable truths about violence, justice, and the human capacity for both. As anticipation builds, The Punisher: One Last Kill stands as a reminder that not all stories are about triumph in the traditional sense. that sometimes the most compelling narratives are those that delve into the complexities of the human condition, even within a genre often defined by larger-than-life characters and fantastical elements. Frank Castle's story has always been one of extremes, of grief transformed into relentless action, of a man who has chosen to become something feared in order to confront a world that he believes cannot be saved by conventional means. In bringing that story to what may be its final chapter, this project carries the weight of everything that has come before, while also forging a path towards something new, something that challenges the very notion of what it means to be a hero. Ultimately, what makes The Punisher: One Last Kill so compelling is not just the promise of action or the return of a beloved character, but the opportunity to explore a narrative that is both deeply personal and universally resonant, a story about loss, purpose, and the search for meaning in a world that often seems devoid of it. It is a story that acknowledges the darkness while still searching for something beyond it, even if that search leads to more questions than answers. And in that sense, it captures the essence of the Punisher in a way that feels both true to the character and reflective of a broader evolution in storytelling, one that prioritizes depth, authenticity, and the willingness to confront the complexities that define us all.